It's time to take your seat in the front row with Mike Vaccaro. Here's your host, Mike Vaccaro.
Hey, thank you, Chuck, and welcome everybody. Mike Vaccaro with you once again in the front row, a CLNS Media Network podcast. And behind the scenes, as always, our creator, producer, and director, J.R. Quitman. Well, we're up to episode number 49 now, and what an amazing guest we have here. A historic guest, an iconic guest back from the 1980 U.S. Olympics. It is a captain for the hockey team, Mike Eruzione, joining us. Born in Massachusetts, around a big Italian family, he went to Boston University and became the captain of that 1980 team. Talks about the win over the Soviet Union, his head coach during that time, Herb Brooks, and so much more about the aftermath, not only beating the Soviet Union, but Finland for the gold medal as well. So much to get into. It is the captain for the 1980 U.S. Hockey gold medal winning team, Mike Eruzione. Well, Mike, first of all, we appreciate you spending a little time with us. It's certainly an honor to have somebody like you join us and be on this show. And certainly we're going to get into the miracle on ice, and I'll talk about that a lot. But we always want to see how our guests kind of got into their sport and how everything started. For you, you're a Massachusetts guy, born in Winthrop. And you were born in an Italian-American family, and you grew up around that. What was that like for you growing up, with a lot of relatives around in Massachusetts?
Well, it's awesome. It was awesome. I actually lived 2 houses from the house I grew up in, and my son just bought the house directly behind me. My daughter lives down the street. So my wife's mother lives 4 houses away. It's kind of a sick area where everybody's related to each other. My brother's not far away. I grew up in a 3-family house, and we lived on the 2nd floor, and I have 4 sisters and a brother, and upstairs was my mother's brother who married my father's sister, and there were 5 kids in that family. And then on the 1st floor was my father's other sister, and there were 3 kids in that family. So I grew up in a home with 15 kids, and we played together. We competed against each other. And fast forward years later, the high school baseball team, the starting 9, 6 of the starting 9 were relatives who came out of the 3-family house. So it was a great place to grow up. A lot of love, a lot of respect, a lot of close family ties, which we still have to this day. Like I said, when my mother was pregnant, my aunts were pregnant, and then my cousins had kids who went to school with my kids, who now my grandkids go to school with. So it's a pretty unique situation. It's and one that I wouldn't change for anything.
And with all those kids around, I'm sure there were a lot of sports being played. When did hockey start to become, the sport for you during that time?
Well, hockey was something you just kind of did in the wintertime. They used to freeze the tennis courts down the street from where I lived. And I didn't have any ice skates as a kid. And my friends used to skate, and, you want to be with your friends and go play. So one of my sisters had these white figure skates that I fit into. And I'd get my sister's white figure skates, and I'd walk down the hill to the tennis courts and try to skate or learn to skate or have fun and play. And then eventually come home. And the problem was hockey's as you know, it's a pretty macho kind of game. And not only was I in white skates, but she had these blue pom-poms on her toes of her skates. And in those days, you could save S&H green stamps. And my mom saved up enough stamps to get me a pair of ice skates. So I took up hockey in the winter. But, growing up, I was more of a baseball player than hockey player. And actually in high school, football was my passion. I was fortunate. I was a pretty good athlete. I was an all-state in all 3 sports that I played. And hockey didn't become a decision of mine until basically after high school, when by crazy circumstances I ended up at Boston University. So, again, like I said, hockey was something you did in the winter. There was no team in my hometown. I played for the town next door that had a program, but the only ice available was when it was cold and you skated outside, or on Sunday mornings. This guy, Mr. Larson, had a learn to skate program, and we'd go there and skate. It used to pay 25 cents or 50 cents to go to the Sunday morning skate. And like I said, hockey just kind of followed me, and that's the sport I ended up playing.
And as you said, you ended at Boston University. It was because of your name, right? You were supposed to go somewhere else. Your coach forgot your name.
Yeah, no, that was, I don't know where that folklore came from. What happened was when I got out of high school, I wanted to go to the University of New Hampshire, and I wanted to play football, hockey, and baseball. And I went to prep school for a year up in Maine, a place called Berwick Academy, with the hopes of going to UNH. And in my grades weren't very good. I wasn't the smartest guy in the world. Unfortunately, athletics were more important to me then, but now it's very different, as you can imagine. So I went to Berwick Academy with the hope of going to the University of New Hampshire, and the hockey coach just didn't think I was a Division I player. The football coach really liked me, and the baseball coach really liked me, but that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to play 3 sports. Well, when the smoke cleared, I had no school to go to. I had all my eggs in one basket, thinking I'm going to go to UNH. So the only school that really recruited me for hockey was a school called Merrimack College, and at the time, Merrimack was Division II. They weren't Division I. So Merrimack offered me a full scholarship, which was, believe it or not, was like $3,800 then, my freshman year. So I accepted the scholarship to go to Merrimack. Well, in the summertime, I didn't play hockey in the summer. I played baseball in the summer. And a friend of mine called me and said, look, we got a summer league game. Would you like to play? We need some players. And I went, yeah, you need a guy to play. I'll play. So I showed up and played in the game. And it turns out the guy refereeing the game was a guy named Jack Parker. No, I didn't know who Jack Parker was. He just, other than a referee in the game. And after the game, this Jack Parker came up to me and asked me where I was going to school. I told him I was going to Merrimack. And he said, I remember you from high school. Where'd you go last year? I told him I went to Berwick Academy. And he goes, well, you played under Pop Whalen. Now, Pop Whalen actually played at Boston University back in the day. And I said, yeah, I played under Pop. He goes, well, we have a kid from Canada that decided not to come to Boston University. And Jack was the assistant coach at BU at the time. I found that out later. And he said, well, we have a kid from Canada that's not coming. Would you like to come to BU? And I said, well, I'd love to come to BU, but it has to be a scholarship. My dad can't afford, $3,700. He goes, no, it's a full ride. I said, well, let me go home and talk to my father. So I went home after the game, told my dad the story. My dad said, what are you going to do? I said, I can play there. I said, I'm going to go to BU. So I showed up the next morning in Jack Parker's office and signed a letter to go to Boston University. So I end up at Boston University. And now Jack Parker's the assistant coach. He's not the head coach. The head coach didn't know me from Adam. So, at the beginning of the tryouts, I was kind of on the JV team. I then got put on the varsity and was center in the 4th line. And I was playing, but, not playing a ton. We only played 3 or 4 games at this point. And the head coach got fired. And Jack Parker became the head coach. So I went from centering the 4th line to playing left wing on the 2nd line and led our team in goal scoring my freshman year. So that's how I ended up at Boston University.
And Jack Parker went on to a 40-year career as head coach of the Terriers as well. So you guys were paired together. Are you guys still like that? You mentioned one name, you mentioned the other as well?
Oh, yeah. I see Coach all the time. He comes to BU games. Actually, his grandson's coming to Boston University next year to play hockey here. So I see Coach quite a bit. We have a bond and a friendship and a love for each other that's been there for a long time. But Jack, as you can imagine, you coach 40 years. You have a lot of love for your players that you coach. So he's very much a part of my life and an important part.
Well, saw something in you and you produced. Again, you averaged, 20 goals a season? Your 4 years at BU, you were the captain your senior season as well. Why did it come easy, it seemed like, for you? Why did you have such great success there at Boston University?
Well, first of all, I played with great players. When I was at Boston University, we won 4 straight ECAC championships, which is now Hockey East. Went to 4 Final Fours. Unfortunately, didn't win any, but I graduated, then they won. So obviously I wasn't that good. But I played with some great players. I played with a kid named Rick Bahar, who's probably arguably one of the greatest players to play at Boston University. So, I was fortunate to play with the centerman that got me the puck. And I always seemed to be in the right place at the right time. And, I thought I was a pretty smart hockey player. And yet all 4 years at BU, I was the outstanding defensive forward in Hockey East. So I had a pretty good, well-rounded game that I think obviously fit into the way Jack Parker coached. But I never really thought much about my success individually because I was on a team with great players and we were always good collectively and, winning championships. And playing in finals of big games was something I kind of had my whole life.
Yeah, 1973 to 77, you play for BU, the third leading scorer in the history of the program there as well. And during that time, I guess you opened up some eyes for Team USA as well. You played for Team USA for a couple of years. How did that transpire? How did you make it onto that team?
Well, I was selected to play in the World Championships. In those days, the U.S. didn't send any pro players, so they'd take the college players and the best college players that were American. And I was fortunate to be one of those players. So I played in 2 World Championships, which was pretty exciting. Although we didn't fare very well. The Soviets and the Czechs and the Swedes and the Finns were pretty good those years, but the experience was unbelievable.
Yeah, what was it like in the U.S. hockey at that time? The talent that was out there. How do you grade it maybe now then to what it is now?
Oh, it's like night and day. Prior to 1980, Americans and even Canadian college players weren't given an opportunity that they got later on. It was like if you didn't play major junior, you couldn't play in the NHL. And I think college players and absolutely American players were never really looked at from the NHL level. And then, 1980, we won. I think we opened the doors and opened the eyes to the world about that Americans could play the game. And then the players knocked the door down. I mean, you can go back to Pat LaFontaine and Keith Tkachuk and Tony Amonte and Brian Leach and John Van Peesburg. I can go on and on and on. And Billy Guerin, name player after player. And now you look at the Americans that play in the National Hockey League. They're so good. They're so big. They're so fast. They're so skilled. College hockey today, if anybody follows the game, it's off the charts how good these players are. And it's now an avenue. Look at some of the great players in the National Hockey League that are college players. Cale Makar out of Colorado is a college player. Americans, Austin Matthews, Jack Eichel, Johnny Gaudreau. I can go again on and on. So the game has changed so drastically, and the skill level of our players, American players, where they come from. Years ago, you came from Massachusetts, Minnesota, Michigan. Now you come from California. You're from Texas. You're from Florida. You're from Missouri, Vegas. It's incredible. Look at the Austin Matthews is from Phoenix, Arizona. Arguably one of the greatest Americans that plays the game. So it's incredible the depth of our game. And not only our men, our women as well.
Yeah.
The growth of the sport is incredible.
Yeah, you mentioned, college, the Frozen Four has become a big thing now these days. You start to see that on TV a little bit more now on the Division I college level. For you, again, a great career at BU. And then before 1980, you spent a couple of years in the IHL with the Gold Diggers. What was that experience like for you? Because it was pretty good. You were Rookie of the Year back in 1978.
Yeah, well, again, you talk about my life, how strange things have happened that led me to Boston University and led me to the Olympic team. I graduated from college and I had a chance to play in the 76 team, Olympic team, and I decided I wanted to stay at Boston University. I thought, that was a team that was going to win the national championship, and I wanted to stay in school. We didn't, and I guess looking back, another part of my life that changed things drastically. So I graduated from college, and the New York Rangers had my rights. So I went to camp with the New York Rangers, and I had a really good camp. And John Ferguson was the general manager, and he called my agent and said, "Look, we're not signing any players right now, other than I think it was Ron Duguay. I think they signed, and maybe a couple of other young first round picks that they had. But we really liked Mike, and he had a good camp. But we're going to send him to Toledo, Ohio, so he can play in Toledo for the Gold Diggers. And actually, you could play there as an amateur, because I did not have a pro contract. I got paid every 2 weeks by the Gold Diggers, and I think I made $4,000 my first year in Toledo. So I go to Toledo coming from college hockey, and I'm like, oh my God, what the hell am I getting into? And it was a great experience. I had so much fun. The people of Toledo and the Gold Diggers, they were like the Montreal Canadiens to the people in Toledo. And I was American-born Rookie of the Year. We won the Turner Cup, which is equivalent to the Stanley Cup in the league. I think I finished second in our team in scoring. And I was all set to sign with the New York Rangers. Well, John Ferguson got fired as general manager of the New York Rangers, and Fred Sherrill became the general manager. And he called my agent and said, look, we're not signing any of John Ferguson's players. Mike is free to do what he wants to do. So at that point, I didn't know what I was going to do. And I thought maybe I go back to Toledo and try out for the Olympic team. Well, what I ended up doing was going to camp with the Colorado Rockies at the time. And I had a good camp with the Rockies, and they sent me to Philadelphia Firebirds. And I played 9 games with the Firebirds and got a call from Herb Brooks that if I played one more game, I'd be considered a professional. Why don't I go back to Toledo and stay in Toledo as an amateur and try out for the 80 Olympic team? So I packed my bags and went back to Toledo, finished the year, and got invited to try out for the Olympic team and made the Olympic team. And here we are talking today. So again, if John Ferguson never got fired, I don't know where my NHL career would have gone. There's no doubt I think I could have played. I would have been probably a 3-4 year player, a good teammate, good locker room guy, hopefully a good guy in the community. But I would have been probably an average professional hockey player, and decided to let's play on the Olympic team and see what happens. And here I am.
So a meeting with Jack Parker gets you to BC, as you said. The GM gets fired, and you make it to the Olympics. What was it like, that process, getting that team started in 1980? And as that team came together, there were, teammates of yours at Boston University. Herb Brooks was the Minnesota coach. So there were a lot of Minnesota players as well. What was it like bringing everybody together and everybody mixing together?
Well, it was really easy to do. People questioned whether the Minnesota and the Massachusetts guys would get along, especially Minnesota and Boston University, the 4 of us. And Wisconsin and Minnesota was always a big rivalry. And Bowling Green with the 2 guys from Michigan was always a big rivalry with Minnesota. So people wondered, can these guys blend? And we blended right from the beginning. I mean, if you know the mindset of a hockey player, you realize at a young age how important your teammates are and how important it is to be a team. So we never had an issue. We laughed about it. 42 years later, we still laugh about it. It was, something that, we rallied around in some ways. So, once our team was picked to 26 players, we understood we weren't playing for Boston University or Bowling Green or Michigan or Wisconsin or Minnesota or North Dakota or Minnesota Duluth. We were playing for the United States, and we realized that right from the beginning.
Herb Brooks, what was he like as a coach?
Herb was like your dad. You love your dad, but sometimes you hate your dad because he makes you do things you don't want to do. And that was Herb. I mean, he challenged us every single day. He made us better players. He made us a better team. He always said there was a method to my madness, and we couldn't figure out what that was. But when the smoke cleared and we won the whole thing, we went, wow, now we know what he was talking about. But he was a great motivator. He was a great teacher of the game. What we were doing in 1980, NHL players are doing today. He was way ahead of his time in terms of blending our team and putting us together to win.
And certainly you did. And as you said, it means more being that you're playing for your country rather than your school. How about playing in your country, Lake Placid, New York, where the Olympics were in 1980? Did that add stress to you guys, or what was that like to be playing at home?
I don't think we would have won if we were playing elsewhere. I think the home crowd, I think being in your own country in general, the food that you're eating, speaking English. I covered Olympic Games in Sarajevo and in France and in Norway, and I saw it can be a little difficult when you're out of your country. The food habits, the sleeping habits, everything's a little different. So to be in Lake Placid and to walk down the street in Main Street and see Americans and people waving the flag and watching the other athletes compete and spending time in the Olympic Village with all the athletes, especially the American athletes, I think it was a big plus for us.
Any of the other athletes that you were starstruck seeing during that time, during the 1980s?
Well, how can you not be starstruck without, mentioning Eric Heiden? Eric Heiden won 5 gold medals every other day outdoors, and the rink, the oval was right next to the hockey rink. So we would stand on the fence and look down and watch Eric just absolutely perform off the charts. I mean, you don't win 5 gold medals. That'll never happen again, because everybody specializes in speed, sports now. They skate 1 race or 2. Nobody's skating 5. So, I mean, that was absolutely amazing. And, we got to watch the figure skaters. I remember Lisa Marie Allen, Linda Fradiani, Phil and Steve Mayer, their performance, winning medals. We didn't get to see the skiing, but we got to see the athletes after. So, there were times you got to know some of the athletes, and unfortunately for hockey players, we played every other day. And when we weren't playing, we were practicing. So you didn't really get to spend a ton of time with the other athletes, but do remember, some of their performances. Beth Hayden, Eric's sister, was a speed skater at the time. There was a big thing about the two of them possibly, winning some medals. So it's hard to remember back 40-something years ago, but those are some of the things come back into my head.
Yeah, almost 43 years ago coming up here soon. But again, as you said, you're playing almost every other day. And in the group stage, you guys went undefeated, included a 7-3 win over Czechoslovakia, the team that was predicted to finish second. So at that point, did you think that this thing was rolling and this thing, something special is happening here?
I hate to sound like Bill Belichick, but it was one game at a time. Yeah. We never looked beyond the next game that we were playing. We had a great tie against Sweden. Billy Baker scored arguably the biggest goal of the Olympics. If Billy doesn't score and we lose to Sweden, who knows how we respond against Czechoslovakia. But our confidence level, after the Sweden game increased, and after the Czech game increased, and then it was on to Norway, then it was on to Romania, then it was on to West Germany. And, the goal was to get to the medal round. I mean, that's what Herb talked about all the time was, let's get to the medal round. Get to the medal round. Who knows? Anything can happen. And we got to the medal round, and then you prepare for that next game.
Well, February 22nd, 1980, it was the Soviet Union. Tell us what it was like preparing for that, going into that, and the message from Herb, getting ready for the Soviet Union. Again, the favorite. They had won so many medals leading into that, 4-time defending champions. What was it like, the message that he was giving you guys?
It's a hockey game, and you got to be ready to play it. You can't make it any bigger than it is. When I talk to kids today, I tell them you can't get too high because then you're going to run around and not play your game. And if you're not prepared, you're too low, then you're going to get your head blown off. So I went into that Soviet game the same mindset that I went into the game against Norway. Continue to do the things that we as a team had to do in order to win. I remember the night before the game, I went out to my parents were staying in a trailer park, and I had a state trooper take me to the site where they were staying, and sat around and had a couple of beers with my dad and my mom and my high school football coach and my cousin and some other friends, and had the state trooper got me back to the village around 10:30, 11 o'clock. Got up the next morning, had a pregame meal, and went to the rink, prepared to play a game that I played many, many times in my life. And again, like I said, I knew it was a big game, and I think as a team we knew it was a big game. But again, you just have to continue to do the things that we were doing throughout the Olympics that made our team successful. And Herb's speech before the game, and I kind of played hockey with a football mindset. Wait for that coach to give you that speak before you out on the field you go. And I know the movie, it was a lot longer than the speech. I remember his speech as being, "You were born to be a player. You were meant to be here. This moment is yours." And out the door we went, and played a pretty good game and won 4-3. And, it's funny, when the game was over, Herb never said congratulations. He never said great game, great win. We were embracing each other in the locker room. It was in a very emotional locker room. We were pretty excited. And, went back after the game. ABC grabbed Jim Craig and I to interview us, and that was the first time any of us had talked to the media during the Olympics. We weren't allowed to go to any of the press conferences, so this was the first time any of us had done anything. And the rest of the team went back to the house where our parents were staying. They called it the hostage house, and they watched the game because the game was on at 8 o'clock, and Jimmy and I didn't get a chance to see the game. So I remember going back to the village, and there were signs in all different languages congratulating the hockey team on a great victory. And I went back and couldn't really sleep that well that night, but got up in the morning and went to practice, and we were signing pictures, and guys were just laughing and joking, and Herb came in and flipped out, screaming and yelling, "Who do you guys think you are?" He flipped up the table, and put us through one of our harder practices that we had all year. And I'm thinking, why is he so pissed off? We just beat the Soviets. But he had to bring us back down to earth. He had to get all that energy out of us. You got to remember, our average age was 22. We were the youngest. We'd be the youngest team in college hockey today. So we had some young kids that were just enjoying the moment, and Herb brought the reality back that we had another game to play. And I said to him years later, I said, Herb, we were ready to play Finland. You didn't have to skate us that hard. And a matter of fact, after we beat Finland, I think we'd have been ready to play another game. That's the type of team that I played on. These guys just loved to play hockey. So, we beat Finland. We win the gold medal, and Herb never said congratulations. He never said great win. He let us enjoy the moment and enjoy the victory.
Yeah, some people think that win over the Soviets was the gold medal game. It was not. You had one more to go. But let's go back to that game, because, again, it's a tight game. It's 3-3 in the third period, about halfway through. You just come onto the ice. Take it from there and tell us about what became the game-winning goal.
Well, it's a play that came kind of out of nowhere. Actually, if you look back, it's almost the exact same spot that I scored against the Soviets when we lost 10-3. Matter of fact, I think it's in the exact same spot. But I came over
right
at Madison Square Garden. So, it's hockey's a game of reaction. Things happen, plays happen, and Buzzy Schneider came off, and I was up next. So Pavlich and Harrington were still on the ice. They were in Buzzy's line, and I remember coming over the red line, coming into the zone, and the puck went in the corner, and John Harrington did a great job of getting the puck and beat the Soviet player to the puck, and he chipped it up the boards to Mark Pavlich, and Pav got there the same time as the Soviet player did. And he kind of saw me coming across the blue line, and he kind of deflected the puck over to me. And the puck came to me. And it's amazing how many things can go through your mind in a short period of time. And I thought if the defenseman stayed, I was going to use him as a screen and shoot. If he came at me, I saw Harrington and Davey Christian to my left kind of going towards the net, and Billy Baker. And he stayed. I shot, and I'll actually be honest with you, when it left my stick, I thought it was in. But I didn't see it go in because of the defenseman in front of me. And the only thing I thought of was that I pulled it because I was going across my body. I thought I might have pulled it a little. And when I saw the replay, later, I did pull it a little, but enough to get under his blocker. And I didn't know it went in until I saw the people behind the net jump up in the air. And then I realized that, it went in and we had the lead. But I've said many times, first of all, if it wasn't for Mark Johnson, we don't win the game anyway. Mark was so important and scored all the big goals. And, I think that's what made our victory so unique was everybody did something and contributed at some point, whether it was Jimmy making big saves, was Mark scoring every big goal that we needed. Our team defense, Kenny Morrow, was spectacular. We played 4 lines. We didn't just play 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 1, 2, or 1, 2, 3. We outscored our opponents, and this is an amazing statistic, and I didn't know this till maybe about a year ago. We outscored our opponents 17-3 in the third period.
Wow.
That's an unbelievable statistic. And that shows all the skating and all the conditioning and all the method to my madness for Brooks paid off. So, I was fortunate to give us the lead. And we continued to play well in the last 10 minutes. And, I haven't seen the movie in a long, long time. But in the movie, it's like, the Soviets had 100 shots in the last 10 minutes. And I've only seen the game twice, and I saw it a few years ago. And in the third period, I think the Soviets only had 5 or after I scored, I think they only had 5 or maybe 6 shots on goal the rest of the way. So we shut them down pretty good at the end.
You only watched that game twice?
Yeah. Yeah.
Really?
Well, I know the outcome. And I laugh about it. I say, I don't want to be sitting at home watching the Soviet game and one of my buddies shows up. Let it go. It's over. But I think with the grandkids at some point, if I can get somebody to change the tape from a VHS tape to a CD, maybe I'll watch it with them.
Well, again, you score what would be the winning goal, but there were still 10 minutes left. What were those 10 minutes like?
It was pretty long. But, again, it was just you see it more in the movie. Herb kept saying, play your game, play your game. And that's what the mindset was. Just continue to do the things that we were doing throughout the Olympic Games. Don't change because you have a lead. Don't do anything differently. Continue to do what made us successful. And, it was a long 10 minutes, but the clock eventually wound down and we ended up winning.
You mentioned the fanfare afterwards. Was it, the non-U.S. fans? Was everybody against the Soviets at that time? Did that heighten the fandom that you guys received?
It was deafening in the building. It's funny, when you're on the bench, you could hear the USA, USA chants, but when you're on the ice, you didn't hear anything. You heard a teammate asking for a pass or Herb whistling for a line change, and even on the bench, you still heard some of the chants, but never near as loud as it was from what people told me, because you're so focused at the task at hand. It's amazing what your mind can block out when you're focused on what you're doing. So, you're watching what's going on. You're waiting for your next shift to come up, and waiting for the guy in front of you, Robbie McClanahan in my case, and Robbie's coming over the boards. It's my job to go over after him, and we would play 4 lines in maybe a minute and 15 or a minute and 20 seconds. Sometimes you'd be out in the ice for 10 or 12 seconds and they'd change and somebody else would be jumping over the board. So it was really like you were in not a fog, but you were kind of just so focused on what was going on at the time that you weren't so clued to what was happening in the stands behind you or around you.
The game wasn't broadcast live, but that broadcast kind of elevated Al Michaels as well. The fans were counting down. He kind of tied into that, was counting down, and he had the line, "Do you believe in miracles?" Yes. I mean, when was the first time you watched that? And I just watched it the other day, getting ready for this, and it gave me chills now. Did that do that for you when you watched it the first time?
I didn't see it for quite a while because I didn't watch the game with my teammates, so I heard about the call, but I didn't see it. It might have been weeks later that I actually saw it. And I got to know Al, and Al calls himself our team mascot. And we have some team events once in a while, and we try to get Al to come to it, and he has shown up at a couple of things. And I've played golf with Al over the years, and I remember every time we play golf, we're walking up the fairway, and it's just a matter of seconds before somebody will yell out, "Hey, Al, Mike, do you believe in miracles?" "Yes." And Al will look at me and I go, "I knew it was happening. It just didn't know how long it was going to take." So, it was a great call. I don't believe it was a miracle. We see miracles with our doctors and, what they're able to do in the lives that people are saving. Those are miracles. It was a hockey game that was an incredible victory, but it was a catchy phrase.
I mean, that said, in your mind, is it the best moment in American sports, do you think?
With due respect to everyone else, yeah. And I say that not for us and collectively, but what it meant to a nation. We could use a 1980 right now. Maybe our soccer team will do something and create that excitement that they've already generated. But, when it's the Olympic Games, it's a nation that watches you compete. It's not Boston or Chicago or Detroit or New York. Every year there's a Super Bowl, and there's one winner from one city and another city loses, and the other cities don't care because they're not playing in it. So I think our moment touched the lives of a country that was looking for something to feel good about. What had happened with the hostages, what had happened with the gas lines, inflation. It was we were struggling as a country to feel good about ourselves, and we didn't know it at the time until after the Olympic Games. We realized that this thing was greater than that. And there aren't many sporting events that touch the lives of so many people in this country like that moment did. And again, I don't say it to pat ourselves in the back. I say it because that's what makes this country so great, is that moments like that capture the spirit of our country. It captured the work ethic, what makes this country so great. And that's what our team was. Herb called us a lunch pail, hard hat group of guys, and that's what we were. Many of us came from working class families that had great values about hard work and dedication. My dad was a Marine, So I knew how important it was to represent your country. So I think that's what made our moment so special and so different than other sporting events. And like I said, I'm waiting for another one to happen. I hope it does. I think it would be something that would be great to rally everybody around.
Well, again, you beat the Soviets. 2 days later, it's Finland. You guys had to get back up, get back ready for that game and the gold medal game, and you're down 2-1 in that game. What was Herb Brooks like in the locker room in between periods, getting you guys motivated to go back out there against Finland?
Well, we were down to Sweden, we were down to Czechoslovakia, we were down to Norway, we were down to West Germany by 2 goals. We were down to the Soviets throughout the game, so this wasn't anything different for us. I've always said a true test of a team is how you respond when your backs are to the wall. And throughout the Olympic Games, we responded incredibly well. And, it's 2-1 going into the third. I remember Jack O'Callahan, he must have said it 100 times. There's no way a bunch of Finns are keeping us from a bleeping medal. And I think Herb fed off the energy in the room. And he walked in. He stood in front of us and he said, if you lose this game, you'll take it to your bleeping grave. Then he walked out. He stood at the door of the locker room and he said, your bleeping grave. And he walked out. And we just kind of followed him out on the ice. And I think, in my opinion, it was probably the best 20 minutes of hockey we played all year. We dominated the third period. We scored 3 goals. We won 4-2, and we won it all.
Again, you go back to the method to his madness, right? The third period was your period. It certainly paid off there again. And so the podium, there's only room for one person for the podium for the national anthem. You're the captain on that team. How did you become the captain of that team?
It was a player vote, but I don't believe I was voted captain by my teammates. I mean, there's no way 12 guys from Minnesota are voting for a guy from Boston. But it wasn't a big deal to me. It was obviously a great honor, but I've always said I was a captain amongst captains. O'Callahan was a 2-time captain at Boston University. Billy Baker was captain at Minnesota. Buzzy Schneider was a captain at Minnesota. Mark Johnson and Bobby Suter were captains at Wisconsin. Kenny Morrow and Mark Wells were captains at Bowling Green. Ramsey, Christian, Christoph, all captains of their high school teams. And if I look further down, I'm sure there were more guys in that team that were captains of their high school team. So, I've always said I was a captain amongst captains because these guys were great players and great leaders. And it was great to be in a locker room with so many leaders and so many captains. So, like I said, it was a great honor, but not a big deal. So we win the game, and everything takes kind of a crazy turn.
You call your teammates up though after the anthem. Was that something that you had discussed beforehand, or because that was another iconic and great moment of all of this as well?
Yeah, I'm not that smart to think that far ahead. What actually happened was they told us this is what's going to happen. Each guy's going to get a medal. Mike, you'll be the last guy. We'll give you the medal. After you receive your medal, turn and the anthem will be played. And that's all they told me. They didn't tell me after where to go, what to do. So I'm standing on the podium with my teammates. I remember giving a fist in the stands to my Uncle Tony, who drove up for the game with my brother. And I remember looking at my teammates, and they're kind of walking towards me like, where do we go? What do we do? And it was just a reaction. There's no way one person should be on the podium when it's a team event. And if you look back after that games, every Olympic game since 1980, it's a long platform where all the players stand on the podium, which is the way it should be. We all fit. I don't know if we'd all fit today, but we all fit then.
Yeah, you may have started something again. Like you said, it's changed since then to where everybody can be part of that. And what was the aftermath like? I know you got a call from President Jimmy Carter.
Yeah.
What was it like right after that?
It was just crazy. You couldn't go anywhere because people were like all over you. But we did go downtown. We went to a couple of bars. You got to remember the drinking age was 21, and 3/4 of my teammates weren't 21. But obviously we found a way to get everybody a few beers. Some players went back and celebrated with their parents. I know we had to get up early in the morning because we had to be at the airport at 6:30 for President Carter was sending a plane to take us to the White House. So I remember almost walking into the Olympic Village around 4:30 or 5 in the morning, trying to collect all my gear to take it and pack it up to take it to back home. Fortunately, my dad took my hockey equipment and the hockey sticks that I had left from the game, so I didn't have to take those home. But I had, the Olympic clothing, and they turned it into a prison years later. So there could be some inmates walking around with my clothes on because I know I left some stuff in the room.
Yeah, just too much going on to worry about all that stuff. And
Right.
Again, such a great teammate. And you had teammates, and Jim Craig, as you said, the goaltender was one of your teammates as well. What was it like playing with him and seeing him have the performance he had during that Olympics?
Well, it was great seeing Jim perform. I mean, you want to win a tournament, you have to have a good goaltender, and Jimmy played spectacular during the games. And we relied on him quite a bit, and his performance was spectacular. But again, like I said earlier, a lot of players did a lot of things that enabled our team to be successful, and everybody had a role, and everybody understood what that role was and performed at the best of their levels for the 2 weeks that we played.
Such a high for all you guys, and some of them went on to play in the NHL. You decided after the Olympics to retire, right? You didn't really play after that. What was?
No,
why?
I wasn't sure what I was going to do. The Rangers offered me a contract, Buffalo and Minnesota. I was 25 at the time. I actually thought about going over to Italy and playing over in Italy. And I just thought it was time to move on. Again, I'll go back to what I said earlier. There's no doubt I could have played. I think I would have been a good 3 or 4 year player. Nobody walked in and said, "Here's $50 million." I think I'll play. So to me, it was peace of mind. And I thought it was time to move on. I was going to coach and teach. I remember calling Jack Parker up after the Olympics later and said, I'm thinking of getting into coaching. Maybe you may have a spot open next year. And he said, well, let's just talk about it later. And then the phone calls started coming for speaking engagements and TV appearances and broadcasting opportunities. And all of a sudden, the phys ed major that I was, that drastically changed. So life took a different turn for me. I didn't know how long it was going to last. Still thought I was going to get into coaching and teaching. And here I am 42 years later. I do help out with our high school hockey team. I've been doing that for well over 40 years. A couple of years, I was an assistant coach here at Boston University, which was kind of fun because I finally was part of a team that won a national championship as an assistant coach. But, life is taken an interesting turn for me because of what happened in 80. I work here at Boston University. I've been here 28 years in development, almost an ambassador role in some ways. I continue to do a lot of motivational speaking, keep busy with that. I wrote a book a few years ago that became a bestseller, which was kind of fun to do something I never thought I was capable of doing. So, life has been, it's been fun. I still live in my hometown. I haven't changed. Things around me clearly have changed, but my wife and I have been together since she was 16, so that's going on 50 years. I have 3 kids. I got 6 grandkids, and as I always tell my wife, we could have lost, but I'd still be happy. I'd still be doing some great things, and we wouldn't be talking today, but that's just the way things are.
Well, congratulations! Almost 50 years of marriage. That in itself deserves a gold medal there. But the book, it took you 40 years to write the book as well. Your book, The Making of a Miracle, came out in 2020. What took so long?
I never wanted to write a book. I never thought about it. I didn't want to go to signings and media and all this kind of stuff. And I didn't think about it until Neil Bodette, who wrote the book with me, called me and said he wanted to do a book about the 80 Olympic team. So I called a bunch of guys on the team, and almost every one of them said, we don't need the aggravation. If you spend time with my teammates, we don't like limelight. We don't like a lot of attention. The guys who want to go fishing and hunting, the Minnesota guys, and the Boston guys, we want to go play golf. So the guy said no, and then Neil said, "Why don't you write a book?" And I went, "I don't want to write a book. You got to go, got to tell your life story. You got to sit down and talk about things." And I thought about it. I went, you know what? I think I will do it, Neil. And I wrote the book, and I say this in the book. I wrote it for one reason and one reason only. I want my grandkids and their grandkids and their kids to know that Papa's life wasn't one game or one goal or one moment. I wanted them to know about their great-grandmother and their great-grandfather. I wanted them to know about their aunts and uncles and cousins and family and how important family is in your life. And that's the reason I wrote the book. I even told HarperCollins, I don't care if anybody buys it. And they said to me, you're not supposed to say that. I said, well, that's just how I feel. And actually, it turned out well. It became a bestseller. And I guess it's out in paperback right now. And, it's I guess looking back, I'm glad I did it. And this is funny, we're having this conversation because my wife is hounding me. She thinks Neil and I should write a children's hockey book.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of debating that. I may talk to my grandkids and ask them about it.
Yeah, I mean, just a couple of minutes spending time with you here, I could tell you're a very humble guy. I mean, again, you're such a big figure in American sports. And, the movie Miracle, the Disney movie that came out, were you involved with that at all? What was your thoughts on that?
I thought it was good. Kurt Russell was actually amazing. I mean, brilliant as Herb Brooks. If that movie came out later, I think he could have won an Academy Award. His performance was spectacular. Although in the movie, he's a lot friendlier. Herb was a little more intense. They softened him up in the movie. I thought the movie was fine. A little Hollywood here and there. But I had nothing to do with the movie. I didn't want to be involved in the movie. I felt if I was involved and my role was different, the guys would have went, wait, that didn't happen. Oh, you were an advisor. That's why. So I stayed away. And actually, I think basically the whole team, I think Jack O'Callahan was involved a little with the movie, but for the most part, it's really the Herb Brooks story, and we're a part of it. I thought the HBO documentary was spectacular. I thought it was better than the movie. But, it's a great story. Kids like it. My grandkids haven't seen it yet. I'm dreading the day they watch it because I'll have to watch it again. But I thought the movie captured the spirit of our team. I thought the movie captured the closeness of our team. And I thought the movie captured what it meant to a country. I think they really did a good job of showing the pride and the patriotism that followed after we won.
Again, almost 43 years later, are you ever surprised about, people that notice you, people that recognize you, and the notoriety that you're still getting, people like me that want to talk to you about such a great moment? I
think the worst thing that happened to me was podcasts. I can't tell you how many calls I get and how many requests. I did 3 interviews yesterday, and this is the fun part of it. 2 college students and 1 high school student that are doing their thesis on the Cold War. And I get that call a lot. They want to talk about what was going on in 1980 with us and the Soviets. I am talking to a high school football team from the Midwest tomorrow that are playing in a state championship game tomorrow night. And they asked me if I'd call the locker room before the game. So I get a lot of those things. It does surprise me, but it doesn't surprise me because everybody wants a feel-good story. And our story and our team is a feel-good story. Now, I don't know what my win-loss record is over 42 years of talking to teams before big games. I don't know if I'm above 500 or below, but everybody's always looking for an edge in some way. So it doesn't surprise me what sometimes has happened, and sometimes it does. But people come up to me and they'll say, "I remember where I was when we won," and I'll go, I didn't know you were on the team." But that's what the moment meant. And you saw the letters I get in the mail from young kids wanting autographed pictures. They heard about it from their grandfather or their grandmother or their mother and father, or they watched the movie. So it's a great story. It's a feel-good story. And we need to talk about more positive things in this world than the negative things.
Well, I know you're somewhat responsible for one victory, and that's the Red Sox over the Yankees in 2004. We had Trot Nixon on our show, and he said that in 2004 they were down 3-0. They watched the movie Miracle, and then you came into the clubhouse, right?
My dad, who passed away a while ago, was a fanatical Red Sox fan, and they were down. I think it was 3-1, and I got a call from the Red Sox to bring the ball out to start to the game, to bring the ball to. So I'm in the dugout, and first of all, I'm a fanatical Red Sox fan and baseball guy. I played in Fenway when I was a kid, and they had highlights of 1980, and it said, if it happened then, it can happen again. Please welcome Mike Eruzione. And I come out of the dugout, and I put the ball on the mound, and I believe Pedro pitched that game, and they won. And I went home, and I got 40 copies of the movie Miracle and brought them in the locker room to give to the team and for them to watch. And they went on and won the World Series. And my dad, till he passed, always said, if it wasn't for me, the Red Sox never would have won the World Series. So if you talk to Trot Nixon, tell him thanks for remembering that moment, because it was one of my highlights after the Olympic Games to be a part of, not a part of it, but a silly story about it.
Yeah, Red Sox fans look at you in a whole different light than the rest of the country from 1980. 2004 was more important to them, for sure. Mike, this has been a lot of fun. Again, I know you're very busy, as you said, a lot of speaking engagements and different things. How can people follow you? How can they kind of still keep up with you? And again, another anniversary coming up here soon, 43 years.
Yeah, you know what? I'm not a social media guy. I am on Twitter, and that's about it. I think somebody told me I have Instagram or something like that maybe my son maybe has and runs for me, but I don't follow it. I hate it. I'm not on Facebook or Twitter. I use to thank people for things that I speaking engagements and business things that I do at Boston University. But I don't have a website. I don't think I have a website. But you can find me at Boston University. Pretty easy to find. You can Google me, I guess. Yeah, I think that's the only way to find me. But I'm easy to get a hold of.
Well, again, incredibly humble, such a big figure in American sports. Again, the biggest moment, one of the biggest moments out there, as you said, in American sports. And it has been an honor to have somebody like you join us for our podcast here today. I can't thank you enough for spending a little time with us, Mike.
Well, thank you very much, and have a great holiday season, and stay safe.
Well, great stuff there from Mike Eruzione. We appreciate him joining us, taking some time out of a very busy schedule, what he's doing now, talking to a lot of teams, and big Red Sox fan, certainly helped them to that win in 2004, no doubt about that. Great stuff there. And again, we thank you for watching, for listening to this week's episode number 49, featuring Mike Eruzione. We'll hope you subscribe. We'll have more great guests coming up. Again, reminder, this is a CLNS Media Network podcast. Be sure to check them out and check out other great podcasts as well, including Cedric Maxwell, one of our previous guests. Thanks for joining us here today in the front row with Mike Vaccaro. Have a great day, everybody.